This is where it's actually shocking.
I think I messed up my ratings.
Why? Anything of that matter. You can't see it on camera, but this sack's starting to pile up over here. So, by Ainsley Hogarth.
Mm-hmm. Why are you just watching me in the shadows? You're like a ghost. Huh?
It's hot in there.
Hello?
Welcome back.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I can see your stack and then I can see my stack.
Yeah.
And not equal at all, really.
Yeah.
Once again.
I was ambitious this month. I can't help it. Welcome back to our channel. We are Shelf Possessed.
I am David.
And I am Craig. And this is our June wrap up. Can I ask you a couple questions before we start?
Okay.
How'd you feel about June as a month in total?
First of all, very long. Second of all, I did not get my TBR finished and complete. I did get a few books on there, but that was about it. But I did add quite a few on to that.
Do you have like a favorite that stands out to you for the month?
I do. I have two that that are in my top 10 as of today.
For the year?
For the year.
Oh, that's good. That's very good.
At least right now.
Yeah.
As of July, whatever this is.
Yeah. We're getting this out a little bit later than we normally would for a wrap up because we wanted to announce the final Girl-a-thon. So if you're new here or if you haven't seen that video yet, I'll link it down below. But we are hosting our first ever read-a-thon at the end of the month. So when we do our TBR reveal for July, you'll see kind of two different TBRs because we have our regular July TBR and our final Girl-a-thon TBR, which is exciting. So I personally felt like I wanted to get through a bunch of books in June. So before we go into the actual wrap up portion, I just wanted to kind of flash up some stats for both of us. David is now officially on Storygraph. That link is down in the description box below if you want to add him as a friend on Storygraph. So I'm going to go through some reading stats for both of us. I'll go through mine and then David will go through his, just to give you an overall kind of picture of the month before we dive into the actual wrap up part of it. Do you want to start? Do you want me to?
Just go through your stats?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so for the total amount of books that I read this month, I read 13 books this month. 13 books, almost 5,000 pages. Pretty fast-paced books, well, all fiction. The weird part about this is that my genres were, I think I read 7 contemporaries, and that was my top, and then my second was LGBTQIA plus books, and then my third was thrillers, which shouldn't be that much of a surprise. So those are my overall breakdown of the month. I had, 1 5-star book. I had 3 4.5-star books, 4 4-star books, 1 3.5-star book, and 4 3-star books. So my average star rating for June is a 3.85, which admittedly doesn't sound that great if you look at it as an average. But there's definitely good and there was definitely bad and then a bunch of stuff in the middle.
I read a total of 8 books in June.
That's still really impressive.
The majority of it was fiction, at least 75% of it, and then there was 25% nonfiction because there's 2 in this wrap up today. Let's see, one of my top genres was romance, memoir, contemporary, and LGBTQIA plus books. 2 came in at 3.75 stars, and then I had 6 that were actually 5. So
6 5-star books. That's really impressive.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
The majority probably not in this stack.
That's a brief overview of our stats for June. And we're going to do something a little different for the actual wrap-up portion because we both have so many books and we don't want you to be here for, an hour and a half. We doing the intro part together here, and then one of us will disappear, and then we will spend the next however many minutes going through our actual grades. So you'll be able to see the grades on the screen and the book that we read. So, and we'll try to do that as quickly as possible so that this video doesn't become like, an epic documentary on June. Yeah. Thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting the channel. And if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe, hit that bell notification if you want to be notified for whenever we put out new videos, new content, anything of that sort. Just click that little bell. We would love for you to subscribe, and we'd love for you to share the video. We'd love for you to send this to someone who you think might enjoy it. And also comment down below, what was your best book of June? What was the book that you loved the most in June? And then what was your lowest rated book in June? Because you're about to see those for us. So,
were there any that you would put in your top 10 for the year?
Yeah. Okay, so I think it's my turn. I think I need to go first, and I think you need to get out of here. So it worked. David is now gone. Gone. He'll be back. So let's get started, shall we? I read a lot of books, and I have a lot of thoughts on said books, so I'm going to try and go through them as quickly as possible. My first book that I read in the month of June was A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I said in my TBR video that I was excited to start this, and I am glad that it's the first book that I read this month, and I'm glad that I got through it. I got through it pretty quickly, actually, in a couple of days, which was pretty impressive. So my overall grade for A Court of Thorn and Roses is A-, which is a 90 out of 100, and I'll flash up the grades so you can see them. Overall, I really enjoyed the book. I enjoyed more than anything else the final, fourth of it. I think that the book spends a lot of time doing some world building that almost starts to feel a little tedious after a while, and that was my biggest concern about it, because it was taking me a while to get into it. But once I was into it, I was into it. So I would recommend this. I'm not a fantasy reader. I don't like, elven fae things. That's not typically my style. But once I was invested in the relationships in this book, I was really excited. And somebody had mentioned that it was actually really steamy, and I did not get that. There was some of that, but it wasn't nearly as much as everything else. So I was really, really happy about that. So yeah, an A-. That's my first grade for the month of June. So my next one is one that David recommended, which is The Island by Adrienne McKenty. And I devoured this book in a day and a half. I got through it so fast. I gave it a 95 out of 100, which is an A. It moves quickly. The pacing is great. The writing is great. The lowest grade I gave it were writing style and theme and subject matter. I don't know if the book was actually trying to say anything, except for something maybe about motherhood, and secrets and deception and all of that. But even the way that it was done, it was still impeccable. I still loved this book. I would recommend this to anyone who has never read Adrienne McKenty. And in fact, in July, I'm going to tackle The Chain as a buddy read with a friend on here. So I'm excited about that as well. So yeah, The Island by Adrienne McKenty, A. If you are squeamish or you don't like survival stories, I would avoid this, because it's basically a survival story. And there's some dark stuff that happens in this book. So yeah, but I liked it a lot, an A for the Island. My next book is one of my best books of the year. It was a reread for me, and it was even better the second time. I was super excited. I loved this book. I love this book for the second time. I loved it even more the second time around, and that's The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I thought this book was amazing. This is one of my only A+ for the entire month. I devoured this book so quickly, and I was so invested. I didn't want to put it down. I'll pop a photo up in here, but we were babysitting our niece, and she was I was in bed reading because she was napping, and she woke up from her nap. She came in and she sat in bed with me while I was reading, and she just sat there, watched me reading for 5 minutes, and then got on her iPad for a little bit, and then she just said, "Why do you like books so much?" Loved the queer representation in this book. I was kind of shocked by some of the things that it that it did. The only thing I didn't like about this book was the tragic ending of some of the queer characters in this book, which I wasn't a huge fan of, but I understand why it happened. And then there were some things with the young writer in this book that wasn't fully fleshed out, but it didn't even bother me that much. I thought it was just great. I loved this. So 100% A+, Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. My next book was one that I just like kind of randomly picked up when I was at Barnes & Noble, and I had never heard of this author before, and I'd never heard of, this book before, and it's a relatively new release, and that is Her Majesty's Royal Coven by Juno Dawson. Once I started to do some research and to dig in on who Juno Dawson is, I was actually like, oh, okay. This book now makes more sense to me, and I'm glad that it's been written. Juno Dawson is a British trans writer, and she has written a number of nonfiction books, and this is one of her first fiction books, and adult fiction at that. And this is essentially about an ancient witches' coven in England that has been fighting in secret for, all throughout time. And then something comes in to threaten that, and they can't quite figure out what it is, and they have to band back together to fight it. I enjoyed this book for the most part. I gave it a B-, so it feels like a lower grade for me. However, I only gave it a low grade because I wasn't super engaged in it as I was going, and I wasn't quite sure what the story was trying to do. But then once I kind of sat with it a little bit, I understood that this is I'm going to say this, but I don't necessarily mean it this way. This is like activist fiction in a way. It's a way to rewrite and recenter trans stories, and put them back in the center, and to really discover the trans experience in a fantastical world, which I think is actually really admirable, and liked it a lot. The lowest grade I gave it was theme and subject matter, mostly because I wanted that explored more, and there were more dynamics with the witches than there were with the trans character that's at the center of this. So, but it is a series. I will read the next one just to kind of see where it goes, and I think it was well done, and I would recommend it if you like fantasy witch fiction. It's a good choice. So my next one was one of my most anticipated reads of June, because once this book was announced, I've been waiting for this book to come out, and that is Tom Perrotta's Tracy Flick Can't Win. I was so excited to read this book. I love Election. I love the movie. I love the book. The character of Tracy Flick, holds a special place in here. I'm married to a Tracy Flick, essentially. And so there's a lot of things about this book that I was excited about. And when I got it, I was surprised because it's a tiny little thing. I was a little bit shocked that the book doesn't even start with Tracy Flick. It feels like for the first 100 or so pages, Tracy Flick's kind of a background character. She's there, and there are chapters that are dedicated to her, but she does kind of feel like a background character until the book starts to pick up. And essentially, Tom Perrotta is excellent at writing about the mundane things of suburbia and the inner lives of these suburban people and why they feel the way that they feel, and making some of those emotions feel more grand than they actually are. And that's kind of what this book is about. It is essentially about the retirement of a principal at a high school, and Tracy Flick is the assistant principal, and she wants the job. And there are several factors that are getting in her way of getting that job, including herself. And then it kind of culminates in something, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a big, not a twist, but there's a kind of a shocking ending that happens, and then the book just kind of ends. I wanted more. I wanted it to be longer. I wanted it to be more focused on Tracy. I wanted a lot of things from this book that didn't necessarily happen. I still gave it an A. I gave it an A mostly because I enjoyed the world that I was plopped into, and I liked revisiting this character. There were definitely things about it that I wanted more of. The lowest score I gave it was character development, because I don't feel like we got enough of Tracy, and I don't feel like we got enough of some of the other characters. It is told from multiple perspectives, so if that bothers you, every chapter is basically a new person. Okay, my next book that I read this month was Jessica Clare's Go Hex Yourself. This was a purchase on a whim. When I saw this at Barnes & Noble, it was one of the 50 buy one, get one half off. And I read a few witchy romances, and I thought maybe this would be something I would really like. And the premise itself sounded really interesting, but ultimately I did not love this book. I gave it a B-. This is essentially about a young woman who meets a witch and her nephew, and she's hired but doesn't believe in what they do, and then that kind of slowly starts to become more and more real to her, and then there's a relationship that develops between her and the nephew. This is way steamier than I imagined it would be, especially for like a witchy romance. I did not expect that, so that took me aback a little bit. I gave it a B-. I think character development, theme and subject matter, and writing style were all pretty, it was pretty basic across the board. Like, it didn't feel revolutionary by any means. It didn't feel like it wasn't changing the genre. It wasn't adding anything new to the genre. I found it to be fun and funny, and sexy, if that's what you're into. So if you're like that, that's great. I don't like that. The more I read these romance books, the more I'm like, yeah, I don't really love that part of it. So a B-. Not terrible, not great, but yeah. Next one I read was another book for Pride Month, which was Anita Kelly's Love and Other Disasters. This is a non-binary romance between a non-binary character and a female presenting character, and they are contestants on a reality cooking competition, which just that alone, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm really interested in that, and that's really cool. And then this romance starts to develop. This was actually really fun, and I really enjoyed this quite a bit. I gave it a B- mostly because I wanted the writing to be better, and the plotting of the book, I almost wanted to be more focused on the show and the behind the scenes of the show and what happens on the show, and less about the romance. Now, I know in looking at it, it's a romance novel. It's supposed to do that, but I wanted more of that behind the scenes. The lowest score I gave this was a 70 for engagement, because I would put this down and then go on to something else. I set this down several times and came back to it several times. It took me a while to finish this book. I did not finish it very quickly. Overall, a B-, 83 out of 100. Not terrible, not great, kind of middle of the road. So my next one is one that David mentioned that he wanted me to read. And after reading Evelyn Hugo, I said, okay, I'll get this book. So I picked it up when I was out, and that is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And I also really liked this. I don't think this is as good as Evelyn Hugo. I think that there are good things about this book, and I did enjoy my experience reading it. And I like the way it's structured, as though, you know, every chapter is a new time leading up to this epic party, and then the rest of that is kind of the residual and the aftermath of that party. And I loved the characters in this book. I thought, you know, Taylor Jenkins Reid is so good at writing characters and writing interesting characters that grow and shift and change. Like, that part was great. The lowest score I gave this was 85 out of 100 for theme and subject matter, mostly just because I think I know what she's trying to say in this book, and I think I understand what the point of it is. There were some times where that was a little unclear, so that's the only reason. But overall, it's an A. It's a 95 out of 100, pretty close to a perfect score, and I really enjoyed this book, and I'm excited to read. And now I'm excited to read Carrie Soto is back. So the next book I read is my lowest grades and one of the hardest books for me to get through this month, and that was Ali Reynolds' Shiver. I was so looking forward to this book because the premise itself sounds so interesting, but I was so bored. I was just so bored by this book. I picked this up, I think, early on in June, but I did not finish it until almost at the last minute, because I could not bring myself to finish it. I could not will myself to pick it back up. You know, with all of these other books that were on my shelf, I was like, I can't bring myself to do it. I think the premise itself is interesting, and I think the way that she's done that is really interesting, and she has set this up in this mountain chalet that's abandoned, and then there's people there and they don't know why they're there, and who brought them there. The thing that didn't work for me is that this is a dual timeline. So there is the present and the past. The past chapters, they do unfold nicely, and you learn new things about these characters, but the past chapters are all about this snowboarding competition and snowboarding world, and I could not have cared less about that. Like, I really could not have cared at all. I wanted the mystery to be more intense. I wanted things to really, really, like, you know, shock me, and nothing really did. Even the reveal of who has brought them here, once I got about halfway through the book, I figured out who it was. So I did not have a good time with this one. I gave this a C-, which is a 72 out of 100. It's probably my worst grade this month. And the lowest score I gave it was theme and subject matter and writing style. I wasn't vibing with it. I wasn't getting into it. So that's mostly why it is what it is. My next one is one of the most anticipated books I've had this year. And I was super excited to read this. Both David and I read this book in a day, and that is The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. Now, before I get into my grades, this book has been controversial amongst the Riley Sager community. His last two books have been pretty polarizing, I think, and people have really gone in hard on them and really said that they didn't like them, and I think people have, are allowed, obviously, their varying opinions. David and I both enjoyed Survive the Night quite a bit, and there are friends of mine who are probably watching this video who hated this book, and I want to validate their feelings. They are allowed to feel that way. I did not hate it. And I'm going to explain why, so I'll put up a little spoiler thing. I don't think this is going to give too much away, but it will give something away. And obviously with these books, you don't want to give too much away. The thing about Riley Sager's books that I've enjoyed in the past was that they make you think something is paranormal. But then what he does as an author is he explains that away practically. And so nothing that is paranormal is actually paranormal. It's more explained through practical measures. And I expected that to be the case with this book as well. And that is not the case with this book. So I was I guess I was shocked. Maybe that's a twist, but I was shocked that the paranormal thing that was happening in this book was not explained away, and that it in fact was embraced. And I think that that's a lot of what people are not liking about this book was that he did embrace that so much, which is different from his other books. But I really got into this, and I was trying to figure out what was going on, and I couldn't figure it out, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. David read it before me, and I could tell when he was shocked, and I could tell when he was having moments of like, oh my God, and I had those as well. I gave it an A-, so a 93 out of 100. It is not my favorite Riley Sager book by any means, but I did enjoy this book still. The lowest grade I gave it was an 80 out of 100 for theme and subject matter, mostly because I think some of that paranormal stuff kind of bothered me a little bit, and I wasn't expecting it, and then it just didn't go the way I wanted it to, so it didn't get a full A+, but I did like it. Overall, still enjoyed it. I still would recommend it. If you're looking to get into Riley Sager, this is not the book to start with though, so know that if you haven't read Riley Sager yet. The next two I don't have physical copies of, and I will explain why. I have been lucky in June to get approved for a lot of ARCs. A lot of the anticipated reads you saw in our Q3 5-star predictions video, I've gotten ARCs for digitally. And so I was so excited to get these and to read them, but it just meant I had to read them on my phone, which I don't love doing. I like holding the actual book in my hand. So that part was the difficult part, but these next two were on, one of them was on our Q3 predictions. The other one I've been looking forward to as well. The first one is Suburban Hell by Maureen Kilmer. When we talked about this video, we both said we were anticipating this one quite a bit. And this is essentially about a group of women who are friends in a suburb outside Chicago, and then something strange starts to happen to one of them. And one of the friends thinks it's a demon. And so, all of these things happen in their friendship circle, and they kind of have to address this problem. And the premise itself was great. And I don't know if it was my reading experience or if it was something in the book, but I felt disconnected from it. I didn't feel super connected to the characters. I did listen to it and read it on my phone at the same time, and so that could have been part of it. I gave it a B, which is an 85 out of 100. The lowest thing I gave it was 75 out of 100, just because I didn't feel like I knew the characters. The character development I didn't feel was as intense as I wanted it to be. I wanted to know these women more. I wanted to get into their heads more. I wanted to, you follow one, and then there's two kind of auxiliary female characters that I don't feel like we really get to know that much. So that's the only reason. It was a fine book. Is it a book that I will read again? Probably not. Will I buy the physical copy? Probably not. Unless, David wants to read it. But if you're looking for something fun and funny and also a little bit scary, you should do that. It wasn't as scary as I wanted it to be. People compared it to the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, and I can see the comparison and I understand it. It's more My Best Friend's Exorcism than anything else, but it's fluffier and it's lighter and it's not as intense. And I wanted some of that intensity for something that's going to be classified as horror. So it's a B for me, not bad, not great. So the next one is also another arc that I got, which is Mother Thing by Ainsley Hogarth. And this book was actually, I was super looking forward to this book just based on the description alone. I'll put the cover up. The cover was another thing that really drew me to it. It was basically described as like a woman has to battle her mother-in-law, but her mother-in-law is a ghost. So I was like, I'm down. That sounds like so much fun, so interesting, so cool. And then I started reading the book, and that description is somewhat apt. Somewhat, but not completely. And I was disappointed that I didn't get more of that. I expected campy, I expected silly, I expected kind of ridiculous, and what I honestly got was a book about grief and dealing with grief and exercising the demons of grief. And I did not get what I expected to get or what I was told I was going to get. So that was disappointing. I gave the book a B-. It's the second lowest score I have this month. I am not recommending this book to people if you are interested in the description alone, but if you are interested in, a horror novel that is maybe a little bit more literary than anything else, I would call it literary horror more than anything else. And the horror is actually quite scant. Like there's not a lot of horror in the book. So the lowest grade I gave it was plot development and reader engagement. I did not have a good time reading this book. I did not enjoy reading this book, mostly just because it wasn't what I expected. It's a very similar experience that I had to Devil House, if you remember that. I just did not have the best time with this book, which is a shame because I was really looking forward to it. So it got an 80 out of 100 for me. It's a B-. I will say that I think the writing is great. I think the writing is well done. It is the way that the story is told that is not great for me. So, and the last book that I read this month was one that just randomly popped into my feed. I saw someone post a photo of it on Instagram, and I looked at the cover and I was like, what the hell is this book? What is this even about? And then I read the description and I found out the author was queer and the book is queer, and it came out at the end of June. It was like, this is the best way to finish Pride Month. And that is Patricia Wants to Cuddle. That is a brilliant cover. Loved the cover, and I was so excited. This is about a reality dating show that is in its like final few episodes, and they're basically going to a remote island in the Pacific Northwest to film these like the last 3 or 4 bachelorettes and the bachelor, and they're doing some things, and then some things in the woods attack them, or something in the woods attacks them. This is so much fun. It is so short though. I wanted so much more from this book. I loved this book. I gave it an A+ because I think it was so much fun and so fun to read, but I wanted more. I wanted it to be longer. I wanted to know more about what was happening. There's some mythology in this book about this island and what's been happening on this island and who these people on this island are, and I wanted more of that. I wanted more backstory of these women that were on the dating show. I just loved it so much, and I had so much fun with it. And I posted it on Instagram, and I told when I tagged the writer, I said, I loved your book, I just want more. Please write more. And she was like, maybe I will. So maybe I convinced her to buy some more. So Samantha Allen, if you're watching, thank you for writing Patricia Wants to Cuddle. It is a ridiculous, fun, light, silly horror book that actually packs a bit of a punch. And the title is perfect. The cover is perfect. I so enjoyed it. This and Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo were my highest rated books for the month. And my lowest were probably Mother Thing and Shiver were probably my lowest of the month. But that's quite the stack. So that is my June wrap up. Those are all the books I read in June and the report cards I gave them. And tell me below in the comments which one of these are you excited to read, or do you disagree with any of my grading? So what do you think? Should we bring David back? Oh! You're back. I brought you back.
You witch.
Where did you go?
I have no idea. It was like book hell.
You were in hell?
I think so.
Sad.
There was books, but there was nothing in them. All right. Well, I guess it's my turn now.
Uh-huh. Do I get to stay or not?
No, you're gonna go.
Mm.
Okay. The first book that I started this month was Genevieve Gornichek's The Witch's Heart. Now, I'm fairly new to Norse mythology or any kind of Greek mythology. So this was my first kind of dive in, and I gotta say, it really blew me away. This is one of the 2 A+ that I gave this month. The other one you will see shortly. So for plot development and pacing, I did give it 100. Actually, character development, theme and subject matter, writing style, and reader engagement, it was 100s across the board. I loved this book so much. The character of Angerboda is just a very phenomenal female protagonist, and the stuff that she has to go through in order to come out into the light again at the very end of this book was really a great journey for me as a reader. And I encourage you, even those who are not interested in any kind of Norse mythology or Greek mythology, to just try it, pick this up, and dive right in. It was such a beautiful story about Angerboda. Loki shows up. So The Witch's Heart, I can't talk enough about this book and give it as much praise as I can. This will definitely be in my top 10 of the year. My next book, surprisingly, was Nora Roberts' Night Work. This was a really fun read. So in Night Work, we find our main character, Harry Booth, at the very ripe age of 9 years old, learning how to pickpocket and kind of steal in order to provide medical assistance for his mother, who has cancer. So we kind of follow Harry as he begins to learn about how to steal, how to burgle. Is that the right word? Burgle? Yeah. And how he becomes this kind of huge professional burglar. But at the heart of it is his love for his mother, his love for his aunt, and also later on in the book, his love interest as well. So for Night Work, I gave it plot development and pacing 100, character development a 90. I wish that the majority of the characters were as fleshed out as Harry was, but this is Harry's story. For theme and subject matter, I gave a 90. For writing style, 100. And for reader engagement was 100 as well. So this was just a very enlightening and incredible journey to go through with Mrs. Nora Roberts. The last one on my June TBR that I actually read was R.B. Mertz's Burning Butch. For Burning Butch, I gave plot development and pacing a 90, character development a 100, theme and subject matter a 90, writing style 100, reader engagement an 85, with a final grade of 93, and that is an A-. This is a memoir, and it does deal with Catholicism, it deals with queer subject matter, and how those two things sort of go, kind of like they come together like this. So the majority of the time as I was reading it, I had to kind of put it down quite a bit because it just, I connected to it a little bit too much, because growing up queer and also Catholic, I could relate to a lot of what RB was going through during this book. But not only that, kind of coming to terms with your own sexuality and having questions about that, and questions about, is this right, is this wrong, but also through the church's eyes, this is not. So struggling and fighting against those two things. I thought this was a very beautiful book. R.B. Mertz is going to be one of those writers that I will seek out in the future. The next one is Tori Amos's Resistance. This too was a memoir. This is out of the Burning Butch and Resistance were the only two memoirs that I read this month. For plot development and pacing, I gave an 85. For character development, a 90. Theme and subject matter, 100. Writing style, 100. Reader engagement, 85, for a final grade of 92, giving that a final grade of an A minus. I think with it being an A minus, I had to put it down quite a lot. It took me a lot longer. I think it took me more than a week to kind of get through this, but I was also listening to the audiobook, which Tori Amos reads as well. It's heavy subject matter as well, and a lot of political stuff within these chapters as well. I don't think I was in the right frame of mind to read it during this exact time. And all of you viewers, if you know exactly what's going on in the world right now. So it was a very deep read, but I'm very glad that I kind of got through it. But I suggest to listen to the audiobook for this because she reads it and she's just a phenomenal artist. And Craig and I got to go see her in concert too. So as soon as Craig finished The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I immediately read it because I had not read it before. I had read Malibu Rising before, so I love that book, and I know the character Nick Riva. He also kind of shows up in this book as well. So for plot development and pacing, I gave 100. For character development, 90. For theme and subject matter, a 90. Writing style, 100. And reader engagement, a 90 as well, giving it a final grade of 94, which is an A. I think the only problems that I had with this book was I think Evelyn Hugo was a very fully developed character on the page. The only problem I had was I wanted to know more about the young writer who was interviewing her. I think that was probably my biggest concern at the end of this book. Also, I think Craig probably talked about this too. I have a problem with books and with movies where the majority of the queer characters die. Those are my own feelings. I don't necessarily like to read about that, and it really kind of rubs me the wrong way. So that was probably the only concern I had about this particular book, but it was a very fast read. I got through it very, very fast as soon as he was done with it. I think I got finished with it in like a day or so. I think it was just one of those books where I woke up at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and by 6 a.m. I was completely finished. So very fast read, gripping main character who I love. Cannot wait to see the TV series for this. I'm sure it's going to come out soon, and looking forward to that next book. I know he also talked about Riley Sager and The House Across the Lake. I read it first, and I wish we would have filmed me reacting to a lot of the twists in the book, because I think that would be a little bit more fascinating. Because there was a few, like, I got through it, once again, very, very fast. Less than a day I got through it. I think it was mostly like an evening. Like, we got it that evening. I started it right before bed, and then I was finished. Like, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I just kind of dove right in and finished it. For plot development and pacing, which I think Riley Sager is just very good at plotting and pacing his books, I gave 100. Character development, a 90. For theme and subject matter, 85. Writing style, 85. Reader engagement, 85. That reader engagement, I gave it an 85 because once that twist happened, I had to put it down and kind of process it and kind of go back to the beginning, which I think some books are good for that, where, you know, if you're a smart writer, you want your reader to kind of take that journey, right? So with the final grade of 89, I had to give this a B+. I love Riley Sager's books. I will say this is probably my least favorite of his books. I loved it up until that first twist. And I was okay with that. I would have been okay with that, but he hits you over the head with another one, and then another one. And I think that's what I have problems with. And I'm not going to spoil it for you, but I'm sure Craig probably spoiled it for you. But if you've read this, you know what I'm talking about. A lot of you on BookTube have had concerns about that ending too, and I will say I understand where you're coming from. My final two. Now, Craig got me this book for my birthday, and I really think it was just because of the cover, and that is Vladimir by Julia May Jonas. This was on our shelf for a very long time. I got this back in March. And I picked this up one night, and I just started reading, and I could not stop. This is the last of the two that I gave A+s to for last month. This wasn't even on my TBR as well. A lot of these were not, but this is going to be in my top 10. It's a very slim book, so I got through it very quickly, once again, in about a day. But it was for plot development and pacing 100, character development 100. This narrator just knocked me off my feet. Theme and subject matter 100, writing style 100, reader engagement 100. I am going to follow Julia May Jonas. I'm going to follow her wherever she goes because this book was just outstanding. And I always kind of made fun of this cover, and I know a lot of people probably have because it's just, I mean, look. But after you read it, you kind of understand it. And I think in a world where we are living in right now, where there's a lot of cancel culture going on, I think this book is a good response to that. Or it's another part of the conversation that is sometimes often ignored. And just, I wanted more by the end of it, which, you know, I love in books. Okay, but it's very slim, but it's the one I'm gonna keep recommending to people to pick up. You know, I'm not a big fashion person, I'm sure you could probably tell, but I do like books about the fashion industry for some reason. It's that hard work mentality that I enjoy reading about. And so when this came up in May, or when this came out in May, I immediately needed to have it. And that is Anna, the biography by Amy Odell. I have been devouring this book over the past 3 days. And I will tell you that I was meh. It was okay. I think if you just Googled Anna Wintour, you could probably get a lot of the stories in this book, and you didn't have to pay the close to $30 that I paid for it to get it. So with that, plot development and pacing was a 70, character development a 70, a theme and subject matter an 85, writing style an 80, reader engagement was 60. I put this book down quite a lot with a final grade of 73 out of 100, which is a C-. I don't know. Google her, or, you know, get it at the library, but I wouldn't spend money on this. Unless you're a big fan and you need it in your Anna Wintour collection, which I hope a lot of you don't have, but whatever. That is my TBR wrap up. So a lot of these were not even in my June TBR, but, you know, still read more than I usually do in a month, so that's great. But 2 of my TBR books were on that, and that was The Witch's Heart and Burning Bush, which I both loved very much. So with that, why don't we bring Craig back from the pits of book hell.
Oh,
Welcome back.
that was rough.
Did you enjoy your time
No,
away?
no, I missed you so much.
What did you see?
I can't even tell you. It was a nightmare.
All right, well, that was all of our books for
That
June. That was a lot of books for both of us.
That's over 20 books that we collectively read together, which is crazy.
Quite a lot.
Considering if you go back even to the beginning of our channel, I don't think we've ever had a month where we have read more than 10 books.
No.
Maybe not even more than 5 books. So the fact that we were able to kind of power through and get through all of these books is really impressive. I'm proud of us. I also this month set up a reading goal for the year because I was like, I was hesitating on doing it because I was like, I'm never going to meet it. I'm never going to get there. Because everyone's are like 100 books or 75 books or 50 books. And I was like, I don't think I'll even get to 50 books. Mm-hmm. But I set my reading goal up for 75 books this year, which I think for me is is a lot.
You met it?
No, I haven't met it yet.
No.
No.
Met it this month.
But I'm about 7 books ahead, which I think will give me some leeway in September and October, which I'm actually looking forward to. So
Okay.
I think my favorite 2 were Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Patricia Wants to Cuddle. Those are my 2 favorite books.
Okay, so I'll put that on my list for next month.
That makes me so happy. I want everyone to read this book. I don't think it's going to be for everyone. I don't even know that you're going to love it necessarily, but like, it's just so silly and fun. Like, I just loved it. So I really enjoyed it.
Nice.
Yeah. What about you?
Very nice. The Witch's Heart. That's going to be on the list. Burning Butch. I love, and I don't know if a lot of people are going to love this as much as I do, but it's going to be up there on my list. But of course, it's going to be Vladimir as well. That's going to be up there on the list. And it was just a fun, sweet, short ride, but it was very fruitful.
That is our June wrap up. I hope you have been here for the long haul and hope you enjoyed that. Are there any books that we read that you're super excited about? Comment those down below and let us know. We'd be anxious to see what you're reading and what you're excited to read. Before we end, just as a quick reminder, I said it at the beginning, but I'll say it again. End of the month is our first annual readathon, the final Girl-a-thon. I'll link that video if you are curious. We've already had so many people reach out and get excited about this, so we're going to keep giving you some preparation content for that. So expect that coming soon. And then you'll also see our July TBR. We'll have 2 July TBRs. We'll have our regular July TBR, and then we'll have our final Girl-a-thon TBR as well. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, hit that bell notification, share it with someone if you are so inclined. Follow us on Instagram.
At shelf_possessed.
Follow us on Goodreads, on Storygraph. I'll put all those links down there as well. And be our friend. Thank you so much for coming back. We love being here. We love, sharing what we've read with you. So we hope that you love it too. And thank you for coming. I'm Craig.
And I am not Anna Wintour's assistant, David.
And we are Shelf Possessed. Thank you so much for coming, and we will see you in the next one.